Hello, my name is Klaus Sailer. I'm a professor for entrepreneurship at the University of Applied Sciences in Munich, and I'm also managing the Strascheg Center for Entrepreneurship. There are a lot of definitions of entrepreneurship, but for all of them, innovation plays a really important role. But what does innovation mean, and how does it work? Let me give you an example of our network in Munich. The founder of Discovering Hands is a really experienced gynecologist, and he found out that blind women can feel breast cancer tumors much better than normal doctors. And so in combination with normal mammography screening, it would help a lot to reduce really serious long-term damages. And so the founder developed a service really to standardize this method, to first have a revenue model on it. And so he also set up an academy to be able to scale his service. What can we learn from this little case? We have in the presence this impulse. It's an idea, but it's definitely not a solution. And to go on in the innovation process, sometimes it's better first to look in the past and in the future, and then you start working in the present. And from the past, we can use our experience, we can learn from what we know, and we also can get inspiration from the past. And more, we can use our competences, and we can also use our network to really use it for the further innovation process. And before we start innovation process, I oblige you to really develop a vision for the far future. A vision is not a solution, but a vision is how can you imagine the future for your project. So let's say we have the vision that in 10 years, no women take really serious long-term damages on breast cancer. If this is the reality in 10 years, we don't know, but it gives you a strong motivation to really go on with your project, and it's also a good idea to motivate your team members, to motivate stakeholders, to motivate society. And so it enables you also to take more risk. So still, we don't have a solution. How do we go on? In the first phase, we even shouldn't think about solutions, but we should first find out the real problem. We should find out the needs of our customers, but we should also find out the needs, the interests, also the pains of our stakeholders. This could be competitors, this could be also partners, but this could be also health insurances or somebody in the society. So when we do this first step, we hopefully know a bit more about the requirements. And this is a really difficult phase because it brings you a lot of uncertainty. But when you resist this uncertainty, probably, and when you feel comfortable in this first phase, you will get better results and better solutions afterwards. And after this first phase, you also bring your utopia a bit more into reality here. In the second phase, we can look for solutions. We can get really creative and find out what solutions could be interesting. So you can do a lot of brainstorming, you can use a lot of creativity methods to develop the next solution what you are interested in. In our example is that the founder, he took some stripes to put on the breast, so it was much easier for the blind people to localize the tumor exactly. And even more, he could use this stripe afterwards to sell it, so he could develop a real revenue model. And again, with such a solution, you come again more into reality, into the future. But it's not enough. A solution is not a system what you can bring automatically into the market. So we have to create a business model. And a business model should have at the beginning a USP. I think we have this, so when you can prevent women from serious damages, this makes sense. But we also should know how can we gain partners, which are the right partners. We also should think about how can we convince health insurances to support this project and to support these checkups. We also should think about how can we earn money out of it. And it would be great if you also can measure the societal impact you can give to society. So this would be the next step, that we should set up a sustainable business model. You see again, when we have this business model, we are again a bit nearer to reality with our utopia. So this is all a bit theoretical. The next step will be you have to bring your idea to the market. And now it gets really difficult because you have to really convince partners that they sign a contract with employees. And this is also for our project a good thing because you can bring blind people into a normal job. The next thing is really you have to have a sign under the contract of your health insurance that they support you. And you have to have patients who go to the doctor to do this treatment. And so this is also a really hard work to really execute. But this is not enough. So when you execute it here, you have to do the next step and you have to scale. Because when you have a good idea, it's a pity when you do only in your region or in one praxis. So you have perhaps to set up not only one academy for these women, but perhaps you have to set up a second academy in another country. And so really you have to find out how you can develop your business. And so what you see here is, while we work on our innovation process, we also bring our utopia to reality. And only after a long process, you will see that it fit together. What can we take away from this little case here? First of all, I think it's important that when you investigate your customers and yourself, you have 4 societal levels. The first level is yourself. I think when you are an entrepreneur, you have the chance to do what you like. You have to know your values, and so you can reach your aims and your goals. But you also have to convince your organization. And so they also should be able to develop goals and to create their values and to bring in the project. Next is really important, you have to understand not only your customers, but all the stakeholders. And as more stakeholders you can bring into this project, as more easy it is to really penetrate your idea to the market. But a lot of people forget that you have also a 4th societal level. This is society. Do you know the laws? Do you know the trends? Do you know what people accept in future? So you should know this, so you should know the macro level of all to be successful at the end. And I think you should look to these different levels from different perspectives. You should know what does it mean, what should you offer to your customers, what could you offer to partners, but you also should have the perspective on the resources. Only when you know which resources you have, you can develop a good business model out of it. Next thing, you have to think about impact. This means first, financial impact. How high are the costs? How high are what is your revenue? And how do you create a good revenue model? But second is also, how can you gain societal impact? Do you have societal costs? And how can you measure your societal impact? And more, you should also look to your enabler. For example, it's about your motivation when we talk about your person. But it's also about trends, it's also about acceptance and all that stuff. More, we really should understand that innovation is not static, but it's really an innovation process. And that means you have different phases, and all these phases are really challenging, and you shouldn't jump from one phase to another one and you shouldn't miss one phase in between. And what's also important, we talked about these different levels and these different perspectives. And for all the different phases, the parameters of all these phases will change. And so, therefore, you have a dynamic process and it will develop all the time. This you can see here. When you start with an impulse and you go one step further, so your impulse influences the next step. But when you, for example, are at the end of the next step of, let's say, the awareness phase, you know probably the needs of the people. But perhaps these were not the right needs, so you have to change your impulse, or otherwise round. And the same is when you go on. So when you come from the awareness phase to the shaping phase, so when you have an idea, or even when you have a business model, perhaps you have to change again your needs or your target group that it fits best with your goals you want to reach. And also the next step is when you want to implement it. So you have to adapt your business model to reality. And so perhaps you really have to change. You have to test and you have to adapt all the time. So what I want from you is never stop, be creative, never stop to think beyond the obvious. And when you do that, I think you will be really successful to bring your idea and your goals really to the market.